a lot of them are really curious about, who's in the matrix and what's their style. And a lot of them want to know too, how much freedom do I have? I want your loyal dissent. I want to know what you I want to understand.
Love that.
Your thoughts, your opinion.
Well, welcome everybody to the System Logic podcast. I'm Jason Lee, the host, and today we have a great guest, Mr. Tom Rossi, Vice President of Executive Search at Jackson Physician Search. Tom has over 30 years of experience, including 2 decades as leading physician recruitment over at HCA Healthcare, one of the biggest in the country. Tom has seen the engine room of healthcare recruitment evolve from the early days of just having Rolodexes of all the med schools across the country to AI-driven data stacks. He's a leading authority in the medical staff planning and architect of the modern physician executive pipeline. So, Tom, welcome so much to System Logic.
Thanks, Jason. Good to be with you.
Tom, you have been a pillar of the physician search and physician executiveship for many years in the United States here. Tell us a little bit about first of all, how you got into the space years ago and how that has evolved over, 30 years of helping physicians find great places to work at.
That's great. Well, initially I was living here in Nashville, having moved out from Ohio, and I was with a local firm that did small boutique search work, and HCA was one of our clients. And then HCA was growing and expanding in that era, and they brought me on to do executive search work. But the big difference I've seen is that in those days, the executives we focused on were the chief financial officer, the chief executive officer, chief operations officer, and then pipelines related to those, and the chief nursing officer. There was not in most of those HCA hospitals at that time a chief medical officer. They would many times have a position they call the VP of Medical Affairs in the team, but that would be a practicing physician or a retired physician who was part of the medical staff locally. So this thing has really, really evolved over the years. Just within my HCA experiences, I've seen them go to not having chief medical officers to 180, all hospitals now having their own chief medical officer. And then the divisions that they report to, the regions, all have a chief medical officer as well as part of that leadership team, and the groups they report to as well. And then a lot of the specialized operating groups. So for example, you have a hospital-based group, and they have a chief medical officer just for emergency focus and just for hospitalist focus, and a whole nother medical leader that focuses on pathology, and another one that focuses on intensivists. So this has really taken off. And now that I'm with Jackson and we're doing these kind of searches for clients all over the country, we have clients that are looking for a system leader for cardiovascular services, for anesthesia services, for all types of different positions that never existed before. And so it's been interesting. It's great to see the recognition that a true physician leader can bring so much to these processes when you're building out these service lines and trying to grow and properly care for the community. And so that's really dynamic. It's really changed a lot.
Yeah. And I used to remember, I've been in the industry not quite as long as you, but definitely a couple of decades. And the phrase, here come the suits, was always one that was on the lips of the physicians. And it sounds like, you were part of the team that would put a lot of those suits in place, and the physicians would have some skepticism perhaps of like, hey, there's only a business purpose of those folks, or there's only an operational purpose, and those folks are just grinding me down, and I'm trying to practice medicine and this, that, and the other thing. And as you think about the sort of the evolution of that, what are the impetus of why some of that has changed over the years, right? I mean, is it purely just to get a clinical face in front of the other clinicians, or are there other purposes and rationale behind some of those decisions?
I think a lot of it is based on the quality of the care, quality of care that's provided, and the way that is now measured, as opposed to how it was before. There are really new ways to measure and track quality of care. And so when you've got more input on the quality focus, length of stay, results, morbidity, mortality, all of those different types of things are being studied at the quality level, and those results are being reported on and even shared
Yeah.
with the payers in certain instances because of the way that payers have changed the way that they do some of this, and the
Hmm.
government's changed some of that too. But so that is I think the big piece in play. But I think what's happened is a lot of these physician leaders have said, it's really important to me to provide great medical care, but it's also equally important for me to influence the way that the whole continuum of care works for the physicians, the providers,
Hmm.
the nurses, the whole team, and the patients. And they can do that from a higher level with more oversight. So those physicians have, a lot of them have got gone on to get MBAs or other graduate degrees.
Yes.
A lot of them have become certified physician executives through the American Association of Physician Leaders. A lot
Hmm.
of them have done other things to grow their skill set so that they can do a better job of leading these organizations than they maybe could have in the past.
Yeah, it's interesting. Obviously, during that time, we have seen the growth of these mega groups, right? I mean, certainly in the 70s and 80s, you had a lot of, small 5 doctor, 3 doctor, small single doctor practices. And then much more now, you're seeing 500,000, 1,500, even, 2,000 plus physician groups in a community or in a MSA. And I wonder, maybe this is just anecdotal, but I wonder how much of that, business entrepreneurial angle has evolved over time, right? Where you had a lot of physicians that were a little bit more independent and a little bit more entrepreneurial because they had their small practices themselves. And now you're just a single physician in one of, say, 1,500 doctors in a medical group, and to have that additional business acumen as a part of the leadership is necessary in order to have those groups function and be optimized. I don't know. This is just a hypothesis that I have, and perhaps that you'd wonder how much of that influence is necessary given the shift in how groups are structured these days.
Sure, sure. And not only in the medical groups do you have that consolidation, but in the hospitals, you have a ton of consolidation over the years
Hmm.
of the larger system now partnering or owning or embedding themselves in the smaller outlying systems all across the country. So everybody has the same kind of phenomenon with the consolidation of these skills. And so it requires a more complex, um, more thoughtful approach to really be a leader. And I think having those physician leaders at the table just
Hmm.
can add a lot to that.
So I was thinking a little bit about this on behalf of our audience, right? A lot of our audience are medical group leadership, folks that work with physicians every day, whether it's on quality or financial issues or access or compensation, right? And so it sounds like today it's necessary to have physician leadership in various executive roles, whether that's the CEO slot or it's certainly a few of the primary or prominent roles within a medical group. How much is too much? You mentioned having a medical director over emergency and over dang near every specialty out there. Um, you know, in your experience as you've worked with medical groups to place a lot of these executives, is there a too much line? Is there a threshold where, either there are too many cooks in the kitchen per se, or you're not getting enough clinical access and production out of the physicians because many of them are taking on too much administrative responsibility?
I haven't seen that yet. I think
Okay.
that could be in the future. I think right now a lot of these roles are emerging. Several of our clients have told us this is the first time we're going to have this position, this
Hmm.
role,
Hmm.
period. And they are again thinking more at a system level. So several hospitals, bunch of physicians, um, a system level role. And the HCA example, they're over, you know, hundreds and thousands of
Hmm.
emergency or hospital providers across the spectrum. Um, so they're a bit removed from the everyday care. I think some of the searches we do when you have the academic medical centers, they are thinking about what they call a division leader, division chief, division chair, division director
Hmm.
type role. And that includes some clinical work, usually a research component, and then leadership and development of that faculty team and the others, and growth of that service line. And that can be a lot to get into and help with. And so those positions, sometimes they can turn over because it's hard to be in that position for so long
Yeah.
in some of those institutions. So I feel like in that instance, it's definitely it's asking a lot. It's 120%
Yeah.
role.
Well, it's interesting as physicians become more savvy about this, and it becomes more common for physicians to think about roles like this. I mean, as you said, many more physicians are going to get MBAs or doing even a dual MD MBA kind of program. I've seen that out there in the wild as well. And so, what are some of the questions that you get from the executives that you're recruiting? Are there any interesting, just off the wall questions about the groups that you can recall from some of your more recent searches the last few years, or what are the types of things that they're interested in as they're evaluating these opportunities?
I think the big thing we hear a lot about, and we try to make sure we cover this, is what kind of culture are
Hmm.
we walking into here? What's their focus? Is it a growth mentality? Is it a stabilize mentality? Is it there was a recent merger, so we need to kind of come together mentality? Sometimes there was a private physician group like what we've discussed, and now they become part of a bigger system recently. So
Hmm.
are they really ingrained, or can they see more economies of scale, less
Hmm.
call, all those types of things. I think the other thing that they really want to know is how does the matrix work?
Hmm.
And because so many of these leadership roles now, there's a matrix where you're over the medical, your chief medical officer or over the service line, but then you're reporting into somebody who is, or tied to someone who's the administrative person or the operations person who's over
Hmm.
that service line. And together you report up to somebody else. So a lot of them are really curious about, who's in the matrix and what's their style. And a lot of them want to know too, how much freedom do I have? Will there
Yeah.
be investment in me? If I'm trying to grow the service line, if I'm trying to do research,
Hmm.
will there be accommodation? Will there be dollars available? Will there be people available to, to help support those goals?
Yeah. And I think about some of the, as I've done quite a bit of change management over the years in terms of physician compensation planning and
Mm,
governance and other things. And a lot of, particularly our audience that has some stake in stabilizing the medical group leadership. As you think about advice that you give to those folks, they're looking for physician executives and other kinds of executives. Obviously, in the past, you've worked with, just financial folks and administrative folks and whatnot. And they're trying to set that culture, and they're concerned about how to build a positive, high access, high quality team. And what are some words of advice or things that you have found to be valuable for folks to think about as they're struggling, or if they're trying to reset some of the culture that might be out there?
yeah, it really it can take a heavy lift to change the culture. Um, and it's funny in healthcare. It seems like everybody has memories that last forever.
Hmm.
So 10 years ago, this place was called Saint somewhere, and you know Saint something else, and now it's called this, and
Yeah.
it's like people are still saying, "Well, it's Saint Joe," and that's not even the name of the place anymore.
Right. Yeah.
So
Yeah. The branding is completely different now. That was 10 years ago. Yeah.
yeah, so it is hard. And sometimes you have to really work together. I think what I've seen some of the best leaders do is find people that are interested in change. They may be very senior level, they may be
Hmm.
even newer to the medical staff, and put them in positions where they can be even on a quality committee or committee that supports an initiative,
Yeah.
and get them asking some of the questions that will get the team thinking about some of these things. And then you can kind of move that ball and get people on board, and not only engage but
Yeah.
activate that medical staff so that they're really part of the change. I think a lot of times too, in the past, administrators may have been hesitant to share some of the ratings, the quality numbers, the
Yeah.
production numbers, the things with their physicians. And I think that's happening more now. So physicians want to see, how do I rate versus my peers
Hmm.
and versus others in my specialty, and what can I do? What can I do differently? Is there technology that I'm not using? Is there something that that would allow me to provide this in a better way? And there have been a lot of technology changes, in
Yeah.
a lot of the specialties. So there's
And I do want to talk about that a little bit more too. But this is a good segue into sort of the model that you and I talked about a little bit before the show, which is the Triad Leadership Model, and something that I know you have been at the forefront of thinking about and writing about. Tell us a little bit more about that model and how that is a little different than some of the more traditional models, and how you like to explain it and how you like to see it deployed.
absolutely. So it has been interesting to kind of start studying this. We just recently did a survey in conjunction with Kirby Bates, one of our other search companies at Jackson Healthcare, and with ACHE, and we released that information. And basically, more and more leaders are moving into these triad, and some are called dyad
Hmm.
models that include an operations leader
Hmm.
and a physician leader and or a nursing leader.
Okay.
And so in some instances, and you may know scenarios like this in the past where the leader of nursing and the leader of the physician group couldn't even speak to each other or couldn't even be in the same room.
Yeah.
Moving away from that to where there's common ground on the things that they want to accomplish. There's
Hmm.
common respect among those leaders and common accountability. And so when they may differ in terms of uh, some of their thoughts on how to manifest change, but when they emerge from their room, they're kind of a unified team, and that allows
Yeah.
the medical staff, the nursing staff, the the care teams to kind of unify around them. And so we've seen this really work well, especially if it's, as you said, if it's set up in a way where the leaders know that that's the model they're walking into, and they
Yeah.
understand this is the way that it's going to be done, and they know that they have, I guess they'd say, the
Hmm.
relationship and the trust to work together in that way and support each other in that way. And when they can, it seems like it takes some of the friction out of some of the changes. And you've, like I said, you've done in change management. It's hard
Yeah.
to make changes in some of these groups and some of these hospital systems and all across the board when they need to be made. And just simply, you've seen groups go from a paper record to an electronic record over the years. You've
Hmm.
seen that dozens of times, and that's a huge change.
Yeah.
Making these kinds of moves can be really well done if that triad model is set up properly.
And are you seeing that model, is it a true equal party, legislative, executive, and judicial branch co-equal, or is there still a hammer at the end of the day, or how do you really ensure that dyad or triad partnership is functioning as balanced as possible? And you mentioned
Yeah.
earlier, having leaders that are coming into it knowing that that is the model that the board wants or that the physicians want. Are there things that can be done to help ensure that that's as balanced as possible?
Yeah, I think aligning that with those types of leaders that are
Yeah.
really, really open to working in that kind of space. And it does take extra time to make sure that there's alignment, there's a standing meeting, there's
Yeah.
that views can be expressed and shared and thoughts can be handled in that way. Um and usually, like I say, it involves a lot of trust on behalf of the participants and the opportunity to really support the whole rather than just supporting the nursing team or just supporting the physician's philosophy on that side.
Yeah.
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 Uh, and what are some of the things that you would do ongoing, and what are the benefits of that model as you think about, we've got this triad in place now, and we think this is going to be better because, and what have you found, and what do you suggest?
So in the scenarios where we've seen the triad really work, again, there's a really, really strong trust there. And it's very important that the leadership team accounts for all the possible contingencies, all the different manifestations of how change, operational work will affect, the different constituents. And then that takes some extra time and some extra work, because normally sometimes things are going to be decided based on a certain plan that was in place or strategy that was set up, and not what might affect those who are on the ground floor giving that care. And
Hmm.
so I think it does take the extra time and effort to get that base of understanding, and to maintain that over time, and to know that even if I'm the chief nursing officer, you can be so aligned with the chief medical officer that you could speak for him or
Right.
her, and similar for the COO or the CEO. In many cases, if it's a CEO, the CEO probably has the ultimate accountability,
Yeah.
but they still act as a team in terms of the way that they combine on some of these decisions and the implementation of those decisions.
Right, right. And you find that that helps any kind of change go down a little smoother, it sounds like. And maybe obviously, physician satisfaction will be a little bit higher, morale will be a little bit higher, and that can impact lots of operational considerations like access and productivity and those sorts of things. Is
Right.
that the findings of the model?
That's the finding so far, yeah, and not only physician satisfaction, but all employees being
Yeah. Okay.
satisfied across the continuum, which leads to physician satisfaction because
Of course. Yeah, yeah. Because it reduces the turnover of the MAs and everybody's a
yeah,
little happier and all
right,
that sort of stuff. That's fantastic. That's
right.
fantastic. Well, terrific. Well, I do want to ask you a little bit more about that, but we'll take a quick break and we'll be back in a moment with Tom Rossi.
Thank you.
All right. Well, we're back with Tom. Tom, before the break, we were talking a little bit about certainly the triad model and bringing physicians on to the leadership roles. But, some of the research that you've done and some of the articles that you've written talks about how the physician leaderships, they're using technology and they're using objective accountability as part of the tools, but really having that softer skill, having some psychological safety for the physicians that they're leading is a key element. How do you look for that, and how do you bring that forward? And then what does that do for some of the rank and file folks if your physicians are able to bring that forward and bring that to the leadership style?
I think great question, Jason. I think that a lot of times the physicians are physicians because they were the best the best students and the best in science. And so
Hmm.
they take a very scientific approach to
Yeah.
to things, and so they like to have that approach, and so when they're moving into these leadership roles, we do find that they need to develop some of these, as you said, softer skills. One of the number ones that I've heard when a person is starting in their new role,
Hmm.
active listening, having the listening style that allows them to learn how the organization works, how people feel about what they're doing,
Hmm.
how things might be better, how things could be made worse,
Hmm.
all of those things. So having that communication style and developing that, and kind of being known for that is a really, really big piece. And also, I think a lot of times the teams around the physicians are trying to protect the physician's time. So
Hmm.
they'll say, well, he can't or she can't meet, or she can't talk to you. They're on a schedule.
Hmm.
We've got to follow the schedule. And what I've seen a lot of these leaders do is break out of that and spend time for important conversations when they need to happen,
Yeah.
and be available for that, and be able to build relationships
Hmm.
with people throughout the whole system.
Yeah.
It might be a financial person that is the most important relationship, and those two people see the world very differently. But if they
Hmm.
can come together in the way that they, at least have an understanding, uh, the physician leader and the financial person can really make a great combo. One of my best physician leaders that I ever worked for, Mike Cuff, was a MIT math student, but he really wanted to
Okay.
be a physician. So he went to Duke for
Yeah.
medical school, residency, cardiology fellowship, and became a cardiologist.
Hmm.
But then he became interested in the bigger picture and the numbers. And so he got his Duke MBA. And he
Hmm.
started, at that point, they asked him at one point to be the leader of the whole physician practice
Okay.
for them, and then eventually moved to HCA to be the president of our what's called physician services group or clinical services group, and then they
Hmm.
promoted him to company CMO. But Dr. Cuff, one of the things that I really appreciate about him was that he said he would always say to us, "I want your loyal dissent. I
Mm.
want to know what you really. I want to understand
Love that.
your thoughts, your opinion, and feel free share that with us in this room now. You
Hmm.
know, and if this is not a good idea, tell me why. If it is a
Hmm.
good idea, tell me why you feel that way. Um, and so he would like kind of have this, uh, as you said, curiosity. He's just seeking to understand. And then when he made the decision, we would all coalesce around it. But it
Right.
made it so much. Uh, better informed on the different decisions that we would make, including which EMR to go with,
Yeah.
all these things that are huge decisions for a huge system like that. So definitely that type of leadership is what people gravitate to. And
Yeah.
even more so when it's a physician who has this clinical mind, but
Hmm.
all this other ability too.
Yeah, and I think you're right that approach can be really effective, not just for clinician executives, but all sorts of types of
That's right.
executives, and some good advice for anybody that's up and coming and thinking about, hey, how do I continue to build my profile as a leader? How do I continue to be someone that folks want to follow and is viewed upon as a decision maker and a future executive of my medical group and whatnot. So I think that's great advice. Are there trainings or are there activities that you have found or you've heard about that you're like, hey, this is a really good type of, and not necessarily a specific branded one, but are there types of activities and trainings that are particularly useful at building this skill and building this expertise?
Definitely, definitely. We have partnered. Jackson Healthcare is a partner with ACHE. They have
Right.
several offerings that are leadership oriented. MGMA does as well. We're a partner with them as well, and AAPL does as well, and other groups too. And it's important to find that right group of physician leaders that you can kind of become a part of, and even to have a mentor, like you talked about those up and coming folks, to have someone who is a physician leader who's outside your organization but understands some of the same struggles, and to be able to have a monthly or quarterly chat with them, even someone who's now stepped back from clinical practice, but they've been in it for 30 or 40 years. To have someone like that can be
Right.
really, really valuable. And so we encourage those type of connections too, that
Hmm.
having mentors, spending time as a mentor, doing those types of things, we feel like can really be valuable learning opportunities for these folks.
Yeah, that is great. And having a peer mentor and somebody that you can bounce ideas off of is a fantastic way to continue to grow those skills and test out some of that loyal dissent, if you will.
Absolutely.
Which I love that phrase, and I'm gonna steal that one from you, Tom, and Dr. Cuff. It sounds like so.
That's right.
Uh, so as you think about that too, in this day and age, the last several years, of course, EHRs and technology have become hugely prominent in medical group operations and even clinical work. What are some of the conversations that you have had with these leaders that are coming in, and maybe even rank and file physicians, perhaps, where technology is coming up more and more, and how do we consider that as part of the day to day, and what are some of the impacts that it's having on physician access and productivity and some of the things that the leaders are having to consider?
Sure. I think in our world and our search business that that we used some technology tools
Hmm.
to understand how to find um, the right pool of candidates, but
Hmm.
then our personal discussions with them yield so much more that is valuable to the decision making process that
Hmm.
probably it would not be available through any technology solution. So we still have a very personal, a very human service that we offer.
Got it.
The clients that we've worked with, the companies that we work with, they, as much as they want to use technology to really support, it's still the care is very much still driven by humans,
Hmm.
even care given through telehealth solutions. And
Interesting.
some of those you have to still have that human that's part of that connection, and maybe even more of a good communicator who can come through the
Hmm.
telehealth solution. Now, those are great solutions that I think
Yeah.
can really help with some of the outreach, some of the areas that don't normally have an opportunity to get some care in certain specialties.
Yeah.
So it's been great to see that growth, but it still requires a really strong provider to be there, to be the human on the other end. And
Hmm.
so as much as we use these technologies, at least in healthcare, there's a very, very human component that we need to
Yeah.
have, and that our patients kind of need, and our teams, kind of need too. And so I feel like that's something to always remember as we try to let that technology can serve and benefit that. That's great.
Right.
But if technology becomes a roadblock to that, or makes it harder for the
Hmm.
team to get that done, and I think then it's worth reassessing.
Yeah, that's interesting. I completely agree with you that the human element of healthcare is one that is often overlooked. But at the same time, I feel like more and more the conversations that I've been having with folks out there in the marketplace at conferences and whatnot, the topic of technology comes up quite a bit. Are you telling me that a lot of these physician executives are sort of not concerned with that piece? What EHR, what types of AI tools are in place at the medical groups and some of these questions? Or are you just saying that those are not as important as what you believe, which is the human element is part of
I think
care?
they're interested. I think they're very interested and they're curious about how these tools can be used.
Yeah.
There's also concern that if not done properly, some of the tools could be harmful. I mean, if we are talking about an AI solution in terms of diagnosis, for example, if the AI is not fed properly, or not completely enough, there can be real misses there that can be very harmful to our patients. So I
Yeah.
think, I think I think there's opportunity there, but there's also concern, and I think the HR tools, um, as long as they're enabling and supporting the the groups that's the actual providers, and
Yeah.
then they can be valuable. But if it's becoming a barrier, then they can be more of a problem.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that makes a ton of sense. And I do think that it's an art, right? Healthcare is an art, and bringing some of these tools into play to help the artist is something that we should keep in mind. And I find though that a lot of the physicians that I talk to are very excited about some of the tools out there. How do you frame some of the AI tools? Maybe obviously the scribing and some of the clinical diagnoses, like automated diagnoses and that sort of thing. Do you get in discussions with the physicians that you're recruiting and the physician executives that you're recruiting around those very much, or is that something that hasn't come up as frequently as I would expect in the last
Not
couple of years?
as much as you'd expect. The systems that we're working with, the
Yeah.
groups and the hospitals, they have interest in that. And some of them, especially describing. I mean, but describing it could be a time saver. And if it's a
Hmm.
time saver, then it makes everyone happier. The physicians, the patients, the team. Those are, I think those discussions are very welcome. But I think that, and there are certain clients that are so tied to a certain type of technology that they would only consider candidates who have that background in that technology, and that's fine
Okay.
too.
What are there some specialties that you're thinking of in particular?
Not specialties, but a lot of the systems use Epic, some don't.
Hmm.
Sometimes they've had a preference for technologies such as that, or
Hmm.
knowledge of that, so that when discussing things with the medical staff, such as closing notes or proper documentation, how all those things have to be done, there's a good experience level with that
Hmm.
in that technology solution. And like I say, other times it's been less important than other key pieces of the pie. But definitely, I think, yes, it's more in the medical record.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. You used to focus primarily on the actual physicians, the clinicians, and now you're on the executive side. But as you look at uh, our landscape of providers, right? And obviously, we've been hearing for years about the shortage of physicians, primarily primary care, and certainly APPs have helped to fill some of that hole. But what's your prognosis or what's your assessment of the marketplace over the next few years? Do you think that the shortage is going to continue to be acute? Do you feel like some of the technology is helping to alleviate some of that with telehealth to fill in some of the gaps, or maybe give more access to patients through faster visits or what have you? I don't know. What's just your general sense of the last couple of years? This freight train of physician shortage coming up against technology solutions that maybe can help alleviate some of that.
We're we continue to believe and predict that the shortage is going to continue.
Yeah.
It's not only a physician shortage, but it's really a provider shortage. And we've even looked at studies that American Association of Medical Colleges, where even if you're including the nurse practitioners and physician assistants who are the
Hmm.
providers, CRNAs, along with the physicians and counts, you're still as the uh, with the couple factors, aging demographic and population growth,
Hmm.
at least in America, then you're going to continue to see physician shortages, which already exist and already
Hmm.
affect the ability to give care. And there's a whole team at Jackson Physician Search that I work in parallel with, who work with clients all over the country. They could be large groups, they could be small groups, they could be
Hmm.
single person groups, they could be whole hospital systems, academic systems, but finding those physicians and providers
Hmm.
and supporting those. And that is to the tune of, just within Jackson, to 900,000 providers a year that are placed into
Wow.
those roles. Our practice on the executive side is smaller and newer, um,
Hmm.
but that is a mainstay. Is that permanent search aspect is continues, and like I say, there are other systems that have whole internal teams that do a lot of that themselves, that don't
Yeah.
need support of third party teams like ours. But
Hmm.
uh, but it's a massive amount of recruiting, and I think it continues to remain competitive. And I really can't think of a specialty where you don't have that kind of level of competition
Mm.
for. So I think the shortage
Oof.
is here, it's real, and it's going to be here.
Yeah, boy, and it's and recruiting some of those positions to be leaders as well even cuts into that even further a bit. It still sounds a little bit bleak. Are there any shining tiny little dots of light in the darkness here that we can point to?
We've talked about telehealth and the advantages of that in certain markets, and
Yeah.
that's been able to be deployed. There are other possibilities that different groups who are supporting different areas are looking into. And the growth of non-physician providers, advanced practice providers, coming onto the team and filling more of the gap. And there are certain states where those providers can practice at a very high level without supervision from a
Hmm.
physician now, which enables more coverage and less shortage in those areas. So I think that may be a thing that we see more of as well. And we have a number of physician candidates, not in the leadership part as much, but in our clinical team, that are coming in who are finishing visas, and they've
Okay.
come to as a visa medical student and resident fellow, and
Hmm.
they're usually allowed to stay here for 3 years if they get proper sponsorship following in their training finishing. So that's another avenue for more physicians to come into the
Yeah,
area.
foreign medical students is a great solution as well. So over the years, you have recruited lots of physicians, lots of physician executives. Are there any funny stories or any wild requests that have been made by recruits that you recall from 30 years of
Well,
doing this?
one of our candidates, he was relocating to a new area of the country, and changing with family, and he said, I have to
Yeah.
relocate, also I have a llama, and
Oh, what?
so some things on my farm, and we figured out a way to make all that happen, and he was able to find him the right place to move and have
Yeah,
kids, farm animals, llama, the whole thing
yeah.
came from one place to another. So yeah, that
Holy
was a fun
smokes.
one.
Did you get him extra moving expense, or did you have to lump that into his $10,000 or whatever?
We
Yeah.
figured it all out. We got a little. We were able to figure something out. Yeah, so
That's
it all
funny. A
worked out.
llama. Okay, that is the first time I've heard of that one, but that's great. That's great. Well,
Llama, and
listen,
I
I
think it was llama and alpacas or something like that. They kind of come as a
okay,
package,
okay.
but
No, were those pets, or was he like selling alpaca fur, or what was
no,
he?
no, they were just part of a family farm.
Family pets.
They wanted the
Yeah.
kids to have the experience and the responsibility of taking
Okay.
care
Yeah.
of those animals and living
Yeah.
on in that way. And so it was more of that kind of a benefit to the family.
I got it. I got it. Okay. Okay. A golden retriever just wasn't going to cut it. They
That's
had to
right.
be have a
That's
full.
right. I
Well,
have some of
listen,
those
Tom,
too.
I appreciate, I know you got to head out here in a second. So thank you so much for joining us on System Logic, a podcast. It's been a great chat with you.
Thank you so much, Jason. Great to see you again.
Well, that is our podcast with Tom Rossi on System Logic. We talked with Tom a little bit about his experience in recruiting providers, in the challenges that come with bringing on physician executive leadership, as well as some of the lessons that learn from being a great leader and ways that you can adapt your medical group, manage change, and drive change within challenging environments. And so if you want to hear more conversations like this with Tom, please like and subscribe. Join us on System Logic Podcast at YouTube, Spotify, Apple, and we'll see you next time. System Logic.